I still remember the way the sunlight bounced off that red Porsche like it had been polished just to blind me. My brother stood there grinning, his hand resting on the hood like he'd just conquered the world, and all I could do was clap, politely. 21 years old, and he was handed a car worth more than most people's homes. Me? I was handed an envelope, not with keys, not with a bow, not even with a card. Inside was an invoice. A list of numbers and deadlines, my name typed neatly at the top. His insurance, his responsibility, my burden. That moment should have been small, forgettable. But the truth is, it became a wound I carried for years, not because of the car itself, but because of what it meant. He was the chosen one. I was useful, practical, invisible. Now, years later, I'm standing in front of a window that overlooks the city skyline. The glass is spotless, the view is mine. My silk blouse clings to my skin, warm from the morning sun, and my phone buzzes on the desk behind me. A name flashes on the screen, one I haven't seen in months, my brother. Funny, isn't it? He used to call when he needed something. Money, advice, a lifeline. And maybe this is just another one of those calls. But something in me knows. This time, it's going to be different. I let the phone ring once more, steadying my breath, before I turn to answer. The sound of his voice drags me back in time, whether I want it to or not. It was supposed to be a celebration. Balloons tied to the gate, music pulsing from rented speakers, relatives snapping pictures like paparazzi. My mother's eyes were glowing, my father's chest puffed with pride. And then came the moment. The unveiling. They wheeled out the Porsche like it was some sacred offering, a crimson beast under the summer sun. My brother's laughter filled the driveway, and the applause rose around me like thunder. I clapped too, because that's what daughters are supposed to do. Smile, nod, blend in. Then someone slipped an envelope into my hand. White, thin, weightless. I thought maybe, just maybe, it was a check, a card, some tiny recognition that I existed in the same family as the golden boy. I tore it open with shaking fingers. But inside, just paper. Lines of numbers. His car insurance policy. My name listed neatly as the responsible party. No bow. No congratulations. Just an obligation. Cold and clinical. I swallowed hard, forcing the corners of my lips up. My hands trembled as I folded the paper back inside the envelope. Nobody noticed, not even him, as he revved the Porsche to life. The engine roared like a lion, my silence swallowed me whole. I remember my grandmother sitting off to the side, her wrinkled hand resting on her cane. She saw me, really saw me. Later that evening, she pressed a small leather-bound journal into my palm. "Write it down," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos around us. "Every slight, every dream, every fire in your chest. Write it down, and one day, you'll show them." That night, I sat cross-legged on my bed, tears dripping onto the first page. My handwriting was messy, the ink blotched where my hands shook. But I wrote about the Porsche, about the invoice, about the way it felt to be reduced to a supporting character in someone else's story. And in those shaky lines, I made a promise to myself. I would never, ever let them define my worth again. Independence didn't come wrapped in ribbons either. It came in the form of a cramped studio apartment where the walls were so thin I could hear my neighbors sneeze through the plaster. It came in the ache of my feet after double shifts, in the smell of cheap takeout eaten cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes I couldn't afford to fill with furniture. Still, it was mine. Mine. No one could take it away. The journal my grandmother gave me sat on the nightstand like a silent witness. Each night after long hours at work, I'd pour my exhaustion and my dreams onto its pages. Some nights I wrote through tears, angry, bitter, determined. Other nights I mapped out plans, how much I'd save, what skills I'd need, where I might go. That little book became more than paper. It became a blueprint, a compass. I started with temp jobs, the kind no one brags about. Filing, answering phones, scrubbing spreadsheets. I was the girl who stayed late, the one who asked questions no one expected from a receptionist. That's when I met her. Linda, sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of woman who walked into a room and didn't need to announce her power. People just felt it. She was the first person to look at me and see more than a background character. One night, after she noticed I'd stayed to finish a project no one else wanted, she asked me a simple question. Why are you here when you should be out there building something of your own? No one had ever asked me that. No one had ever implied I was capable of more. She became my mentor, my anchor. She taught me the things no textbook covers. How to negotiate without flinching. How to sit at a boardroom table without shrinking. How to let silence work in my favor. She drilled into me that respect isn't given. It's taken, earned, defended. The nights were long. I burned through rejection emails, overdrafted my bank account more times than I want to admit, and stared at my ceiling wondering if invisibility might be easier than carving a name from stone. But every setback only fueled me. Every no went into the journal, and next to it, I wrote what I would do better next time. The wins started small. My first freelance project. My first client who paid on time and praised my work. My first $1,000 earned on my own terms. Not from cleaning up someone else's mess, not from carrying someone else's weight, but from me. I didn't broadcast it. Not to my family. Not to my brother, who was too busy flaunting his Porsche on social media. I posted nothing but vague updates. Work is going well. Keeping busy. Because some part of me wanted silence. I wanted my success to be my secret weapon, tucked away until the day it would matter most. By the time I moved into my first real apartment, one with thick walls and a view of the skyline instead of a brick wall, I realized something. I was no longer writing in my journal about survival. I was writing about strategy, about growth, about what empire I'd build next. They still thought of me as the girl who paid invoices, but quietly, brick by brick, I was building the kind of life that would one day make them choke on their underestimation. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day you'd expect to be quiet, lazy, harmless. My phone buzzed with a family group message. "We're in the city, coming by to see you." No question mark, no warning, just a declaration, like I was still the little girl who had to open her door when they knocked. I stared at the screen for a long moment, my coffee cooling in my hands. Part of me wanted to make an excuse, to vanish like I used to. But another part, the stronger part, whispered, "Let them come." An hour later, I opened the door. They hesitated on the threshold, eyes widening as they stepped inside. My brother was the first to speak. "Wow, nice place," he muttered. His voice caught somewhere between admiration and disbelief. I watched their gazes sweep over everything, the marble countertops, the framed abstract art, the floor-to-ceiling windows that spilled sunlight across polished hardwood floors. The soft hum of the city rose up beneath us, 20 stories below. On the far wall hung a single, unassuming frame, the first page of my grandmother's journal gift, preserved behind glass. Silence settled heavy in the room. They were waiting for an explanation. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "So, what is it you do here, exactly?" His tone carried that old familiar edge, polite on the surface, dismissive underneath. I smiled. Slow, deliberate. The kind of smile that says, you have no idea what's coming. "This," I said, gesturing to the office beyond my living room, where my company's name gleamed in brushed steel across the wall. "This is mine. The business, the building, the team, all of it." My brother's laugh was short, nervous. "Come on, seriously," I held his gaze. "Seriously. While you were busy test driving cars, I was building something that lasts longer than a leather interior." His jaw tightened. but he said nothing. My mother's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. For once, they were speechless. I let the silence stretch, let them sit with the weight of what they were seeing, their invisible daughter standing in the center of a life she'd built brick by brick, without their applause, without their blessing. "You remember your 21st birthday?" I asked softly, my eyes never leaving my brother's. "When you got a Porsche and I got an invoice." The color drained from his face. He remembered. Oh, he remembered. "I kept that invoice," I said, my voice steady now, pulsing with the rhythm of truth. "I framed it in my office, because that was the day I decided I'd never wait for anyone else to decide I was worth investing in. I invested in myself." I walked to the shelf, pulling down a leather-bound book, my grandmother's journal. I laid it gently on the glass coffee table between us. Every plan I wrote down, every setback, every goal, it's all in here. And every line was fueled by the moment you all told me, without saying a word, that I wasn't enough. Their eyes followed the journal like it was some sacred artifact. "This," I whispered, "is what your Porsche bought me. Not bitterness, not failure, power, freedom, a life I don't need your approval for." The silence cracked then, my mother's voice breaking through, fragile. We didn't realize." "No," I interrupted gently. "You didn't." But I did, and that made all the difference. For the first time in years, I felt taller. Not because of the view, not because of the wealth, but because I finally saw it in their faces. Recognition, shock, maybe even respect. The balance had shifted, and for the first time, I was no longer invisible. My brother broke the silence first. "Look," he said, forcing a chuckle that didn't quite land, "I always knew you were doing okay, but this is crazy. You should have told us." I tilted my head. "Told you? Why? So you could pat me on the head and remind me it was probably a phase? Or worse, take credit for teaching me resilience." He shifted uncomfortably, glancing at my parents as if searching for backup. But my mother was staring at the floor, and my father's mouth had pressed into a hard, thin line. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "We may not have understood. We may have been unfair. But family is family. Surely there's something you can do for your brother, for all of us." There it was, the ask. The same entitlement that had wrapped itself around every childhood memory. Their assumption that I was there to clean up, carry weight, fill in the blanks. But not anymore. I folded my arms, leaning back into the sofa as sunlight spilled across my blouse. My voice was calm, measured, deliberate. "I can help, but only under certain conditions." Their heads snapped up. "Conditions?" my brother repeated, incredulous. "Yes, conditions." I let the word linger in the air, sharp and undeniable, because I didn't build all this just to become your safety net. If you want my help, you'll meet me halfway, on my terms. I pointed at my brother first. "You want me to cover your debts? Fine, but you're selling the Porsche. Today. I don't care if you cry, I don't care if you beg, you're selling it. Because that car has symbolized everything wrong with this family since the day it pulled into our driveway. If you can't let it go, then you can't grow. And if you can't grow, I won't waste another cent on you." He blinked, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. For once, he had no comeback. Then I turned to my parents. My voice softened, but my words stayed firm. "You want my support, emotional, financial, whatever? Then here's what I ask. Respect, not just for me, but for yourselves. Stop comparing. Stop playing favorites. Start seeing your children as people, not trophies or workhorses. You want a relationship with me? Earn it. Show me that I matter without strings attached." My mother's eyes glistened, but she stayed quiet. My father looked as though he'd swallowed something bitter. "And one more thing," I added, placing my hand gently on the journal. This book taught me that my worth is not measured by what others give me, but by what I demand of myself. If you want to be part of my life, you'll stop treating me like the girl who got the invoice. That girl doesn't live here anymore. The room was thick with silence, but it wasn't the suffocating kind I used to know. It was charged, shifting, heavy with the weight of power moving into new hands, my hands. For the first time, they weren't dictating the terms. I was. The silence stretched until I thought it might snap. Then, slowly, my mother reached across the table and touched the corner of the journal. Her fingers trembled. "Your grandmother was right about you," she whispered. "You've always been stronger than we wanted to admit." For a moment, I saw her. Not the woman who handed me an envelope that day. Not the one who had smiled at my brother's Porsche, but just a mother. Fragile, uncertain, trying to make amends. My father cleared his throat, his voice rough. "I don't know if I can change overnight, but I'll try, if you'll let me." And my brother, he just sat there staring at his hands. Finally he exhaled. "I'll sell the car," he muttered, barely above a whisper. Maybe it's time I stop acting like a child. I studied them, my heart a mix of anger, relief, and something softer. I wasn't naive. People don't transform in a single afternoon. But for the first time, they weren't brushing me aside. They weren't laughing off my words or dismissing my worth. They were listening. That night, after they left, I stood by the window and looked out at the city lights glittering like scattered jewels. The journal lay open on the table behind me, the last entry still fresh. Power is not what they give you, it's what you take back. I thought of the girl who had once held an insurance invoice in her shaking hands, who had swallowed her pain and written in secret. I thought of the Porsche's engine roaring in my ears, while my own worth sat invisible in the shadows. And then I thought of now, of marble floors, steel letters, a voice that no longer shook when it demanded space. My grandmother's words echoed in my chest, steady and clear. "Write it down and one day you'll show them." I smiled, closing the journal with a gentle thud. She had been right. I had written it all down, and I had shown them. The Porsche may have turned heads that summer, but me? I built a life that turned the balance of power. He got a Porsche. I got an invoice. And in the end, I drove farther than anyone ever expected.